Stop for freedom.
ICBM is a major part of the U.S.'s nuclear defense strategy. But there's a problem. These Minuteman missiles were supposed to last 10 years, but that's turned into almost 60. The Air Force is spending over $100 billion to replace them with a new, modern iteration, the Sentinel missiles. But there are concerns about the process of replacing them, even from the head of the Air Force.
Sentinel, I think, is quite honestly struggling a little bit.
Here's how ICBMs fit into the U.S.'s nuclear strategy, how they work, and why the challenges of replacing them are mounting. ICBMs make up the land leg of the U.S.'s nuclear defense strategy, called the Nuclear Triad. The other two legs are submarines in the sea and bombers in the air.
The submarines are going to have that greater stealthy quality. Bombers have the greatest flexibility in terms of taking different routes, flexibility in terms of recalling and not firing. The benefit of ICBMs is not their location necessarily, but the fact that they're distributed.
That is, they're distributed in silos across 5 states and about 40,000 square miles.
By having 450 silos spread out over a number of states in the American West, that creates a massive targeting problem for the other side. To kill 450 silos, you would have to devote 800 or 900 weapons, round numbers.
The Air Force says that a Minuteman missile can travel about 5,000 miles in under 30 minutes. To do that, the missiles are designed with 4 main parts. The first is this large rocket. The second and third are smaller, yet still powerful rockets. And the fourth is the nuclear warhead, covered with a protective shroud. The first large rocket allows the missile to pull away from Earth's gravity, and the warhead jettisons its shroud. The second and then third motors push it through the top of Earth's atmosphere. Then, the nuclear warhead can re-enter the atmosphere to reach its detonation site. But some of these Minuteman missiles, although continuously upgraded, are now over 50 years old and losing reliability.
The solid rocket motors that are in them tend to crack and have other problems when they've been sitting in a cold silo, say for decades on end.
The Sentinel ICBMs set to replace them work like the Minuteman missiles, but the new outer bodies will be made of carbon composites instead of heavier steel, potentially allowing for more nuclear warheads. Changes like these may allow for the Sentinels to be upgraded more easily during their estimated 50-year lifespan.
As opposed to opening up the silo door and going down and plugging things in from the side of the missile, the facilities are going to permit a much better and more efficient way of updating the system.
But these updated missiles and facilities aren't cheap. And updating the silos has been more complex than anticipated. That's a problem for the Air Force. The Sentinel program was once projected to cost $96 billion, but now the Air Force says it's on track to spend $130 billion. You can see why on this map of one of the 3 silo fields. These are the launch silos, and this is the copper communication wire connecting them. Much of this land is privately owned. The Air Force has to buy some areas in order to rebuild the silos with modern technology and replace the wiring.
That's probably the biggest thing in some ways that the Air Force has ever taken on, because it's a vast real estate development.
What the Air Force and the Pentagon broadly is finding is that perhaps they didn't take into account some of the enormous efforts that would be required.
Another weakness? The Sentinel's tech could potentially be easier to hack than a Minuteman missiles, according to one analyst.
As compared to an ICBM that was first deployed in 1971 and that until 5 years ago was still using some form of large floppy disk, the Sentinel is going to be a 21st century missile in every respect.
To hack a Minuteman missile, an enemy would have to dig up the copper communication wire and manually splice it to get it to launch.
There's actually a kind of a benefit to that. There's a beauty and simplicity to that because it's really hard to hack an analog system from the 1970s.
Since the Sentinels will have significantly more software than the Minuteman missiles, officials are taking precautions, like upping boundary security.
I would say there is an enormous amount of attention being paid to looking for potential vulnerabilities in our nuclear command and control. And in terms of the Sentinel, they're going to make sure that it is resilient against all that kind of thing.
But increasing security and vast real estate acquisitions have led to the project going at 37% over budget, which means it has to be reviewed by the Department of Defense and Congress. It's called a Nunn-McCurdy breach.
DoD has hundreds of programs going on at any given time. Since 2007, Nunn-McCurdy has had a couple dozen of these breaches.
Since these breaches are significant, the review will be incredibly detailed as they decide whether the Sentinel project should continue. And some lawmakers are arguing it's too expensive.
The estimates are well over $150 billion. For what purpose? To make us safer? No. Won't make us safer at all.
The Air Force and the Office of the Secretary of Defense say that having all three legs of the triad is essential to American nuclear defense. The Pentagon review is due in summer 2024, but military experts say it's unlikely to be halted.
Every presidential administration since the end of the Cold War